Call to order the Maplewood Design Review Board meeting of September 21st. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Jason Lamer's present.
Anand Shankar present.
And we'll let the record show that Chairperson Kempe is not with us tonight, but we do have quorum.
Okay.
Any changes to the agenda?
Chair and board, staff does not have any amendments to the agenda as presented.
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, I'll second that. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is approved. Next, we have the approval of the meeting minutes of July 27, 2021.
Chair and board, staff does not have any amendments to the minutes as presented.
Any comments on the minutes of the last meeting?
I did not have any adjustments or changes to the meeting minutes.
Okay,
So
I
I
did
would-
not have any either, so
I'll motion to approve the minutes from the July 27th CDRB meeting.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes of last meeting, July 27th is approved. Now we move on to the new business. Staff report, please.
Chair and board, our first item tonight is the Lower Afton Apartments application, which located at 2501 London Lane. I'll have a few slides up here on the screen to guide us through our discussion this afternoon. What's proposed is a new 148-unit multifamily building. This is located on city-owned property that would be sold to the developer. It's the location of a former fire station site. The site itself is 5.92 acres in size. To move forward with this project, the applicant needs approval of a zoning map amendment, a conditional use permit for building height, and design review. The Community Design Review Board is specifically looking at design review tonight. The official controls for the properties, the future land use plan, the 2040 comprehensive plan designation is high-density residential, which means up to 25 units per acre. It is currently zoned F farm residence. When the 2040 comprehensive plan was adopted in 2019, that's obligated the city to update the zoning of this site to match and be consistent with the high density designation. And so that the zoning district that would do that is the R3 multiple dwelling, which is being proposed, and the Planning Commission will be looking at that later this evening. The proposed use does meet the comprehensive plan requirements in terms of density and land use. As I mentioned, the conditional use permit is required for building height. Any building more than 3 stories or 35 feet in height triggers a conditional use permit. This building is 3 stories, but would be over that 35-foot mark, thus triggering the conditional use permit. The top of the 3rd floor is approximately 31 feet in height, but when measuring to the midpoint of the highest peak of the roof, which is how the code defines height, the building is approximately 40 feet. Now jumping into the design review, again, what the board is looking at tonight. The site will be accessed by 2 drives off London Lane. You can see a access drive on the west side of the site and a secondary one on the east side of the site. The current access drives off Lower Afton Road that work with the former fire station building would go away and be restored to a curb along Lower Afton. The building setback is required to be 30 feet from both Lower Afton and London Lane, and the building itself would be proposed to be setback 40.5 feet from Lower Afton and 31.3 feet from London Lane. The building itself is required to be 100 feet setback from the west property line, but would be built at 159 feet. There is a pipeline that runs along the west edge of the property. Maplewood's pipeline ordinance requires buildings to be set back 100 feet from a pipeline, and this proposed building would be set back just under 126 feet. So all setbacks for the building are being met and exceeded in all cases. And then the parking lot has a 15-foot setback from all streets and a 20-foot setback from the west property line, and it is meeting all those setback requirements. The building elevations, the building's proposed to be constructed of the charcoal gray metal panels that are summer wheat colored, cement fiberboard shakes, also with that summer wheat color, and then cast stone would be used on the ends of the building. The applicant is present tonight and has been requested to bring building material samples and colors, and the board can ask more direct questions to the applicant at that time. All minimum floor area requirements, so how big the units themselves are being met, as well as the photometric plan for this site has been met. Looking at the parking, multifamily buildings are required to provide 2 parking spaces for each unit. Half of those parking spaces are required to be covered. So for this project, 296 spaces are required, and the applicant is providing 298 spaces, with 151 of those in an underground garage and 147 split between the surface lots. You can see on the west side is the larger surface lot, and then a smaller surface lot on the east side of the building. Looking at the landscaping plan, the applicant is removing 13 trees, but is planting 79 new trees, which meets the tree replacement requirements for this project. There is a vegetation along the west boundary that would not be disturbed between this site and the existing cooperative buildings that are to the west of this site. And then numerous shrubs, perennials, and grasses are being planted throughout the site, as you can see in the landscape plan that was included with your packet this evening. One exhibit that the staff would require before a building permit is issued is showing that the applicant would be meeting the screening requirements from headlight glare. So this is where the concern would be on the west side of the site. Ordinance does require that 80% opaqueness, 6-foot tall screening barrier, whether it's vegetation or structured fence. The applicant has the choice to work with either of those. And again, we can use existing vegetation as long as it's year-round. So we need the applicant just to show an exhibit on how the existing conditions would either be part of meeting that condition and what they would be adding to meet that ordinance standard. The developer held a neighborhood meeting on August 26th at the Maplewood Nature Center. The city sent 231 property owners a neighborhood survey, and then we sent another letter to those same property owners indicating the public hearing that will be held later tonight with the Planning Commission. The city received 22 replies that are included with your staff report tonight. Since the reports themselves were sent out last week, we have received additional comments that we will include in the staff report that gets sent to the city council. Themes that emerged, concerns with screening fencing, which I just discussed, and then also stormwater and traffic. And that leads me to our next series of slides, which Steve Love, the city's public works director, is present tonight, and he's going to walk through a few slides here.
Sure. So, Chair, member of the commission, what I have here is a slide that kind of shows a bird's eye view of the large area. The site on the east there is the existing fire station, and what you see there in yellow is the existing storm sewer system that takes runoff from the parking lot in the building and discharges it out towards the west there. From there, that water, along with the majority of the rest of the site water, flows over land. These are 10-foot contours in blue that you see, and so the water travels over land there. Across to the west, there's an existing pond there on the west. So this is the existing drainage pattern as it sits today, and then we'll click ahead here. And so what I've done here is I've overlaid the proposed site plan over top of this to kind of give some perspective. And if we click one more time. So this image here, you can see that in the upper left corner of the site is the infiltration basin, or the filtration basin. There's a little short blue line. That's where the outlet from the basin is going to be at. You can see that it's about 200 feet or so farther to the north. So this is actually, I think, a really good thing, because there were some concerns about water from the site going to the neighboring property, but this is actually moving that outlet farther to the north, farther away from the existing Camara buildings there. If we can go to the next one. And so the applicant does have to meet our stormwater, water quality and rate control requirements. And in this case, you can see here we're looking at our 3 storm design. vents. We have a 2, 10, and 100, and they are reducing the runoff rate from the site significantly in the 2-year, and all the way up to the 100-year is a minor reduction as well. As far as the traffic goes, we did have our consultant SEH do a evaluation of future traffic levels generated by this development. Overall, what we found was that the existing traffic volumes on Lower Afton and London Lane are adequate, or the traffic configuration is adequate for this proposed development. We're not recommending any changes. We expect it to function acceptably. And the one of the recommendations we had was with regards to the crosswalk at Lower Afton. Lower Afton is a county road, so we're recommending that the applicant reviews that crossing with Ramsey County, and Ramsey County has their own pedestrian crossing policy, just to make sure that there isn't any changes to that existing crossing that might be required.
Who would be responsible for changes to that crossing should the quantity of people potentially crossing there change? Would the applicant be responsible for that, or would the county?
Chair, Commission, if it was I would imagine that if it was part of the proposed development review, that would probably be something that would be worked out between the applicant and the county. If it was a later on down the road, after the project is completed, I imagine that might be the county that would be responsible for that.
So, Chair and Board, that concludes the presentation we have prepared for you this evening. Staff can stand for any questions, but I did mention, as I mentioned, the applicant is present tonight and can answer any questions directly from the board as well. Oh, and actually, the developer does have a few slides that they'd like to walk through as well with you, if that's with your permission.
Yeah.
Any questions for staff?
No, that corner parking lot closest to where you come around the corner from Lower Afton Road, that entrance, there's not too much parking there that would cause that to back up there at all with the change of use from a fire station to an apartment parking lot.
Chair, members of the commission, I know that was one of the comments that we have in our engineering review to evaluate it for sightline review, as far as like with proposed plantings or grading, to make sure that that sightline is available. As I understand it, that east parking lot is probably going to be the lower volume traffic parking lot of this development, with the larger parking lot to the west being where most of the people that are living there will be coming in and out of on a day-to-day basis. So,
Okay.
Did the applicant try to come up with a scheme with additional underground parking, or maybe more parking on the northwest side which you alluded to for drainage, so that this east parking lot can be eliminated altogether?
Chair and Board, that specific question I think would be most appropriate for the applicant to talk about how they came up with their site design and why they ultimately landed on what's being presented to you.
Because I concur with Jason's concern over here. To me, when I look at the site plan, and I go there all the time, I'm driving over there, I'm just concerned with the additional traffic at that corner of London and Lower Afton.
Yeah, and Chair and Board and applicant again can speak more specifically to this, but our analysis of the two lots is that the one on the east is it's centered where you would access that for the main entrance to the building, but to access the garage and most of the residential parking is to that lot to the west. So we do feel that most of that traffic is going to be directed to the west side of the building, and that this is a secondary lot to the use. But again, I think it would be helpful if you, when you're ready, to invite the applicant up to have them address that more specifically.
Okay, the applicant, please step forward and share with us your slides and any comments you have. Please state your name and address.
Equities, and my address is 741 Evergreen Knolls in Mendota Heights. So you want me to spin through the presentation first? Okay. So this presentation will be generally pretty brief, but the first page is just kind of some background on our company, just to give you guys a little bit of information on that. Real Estate Equities is a multifamily property management firm that owns, manages, and develops today in excess of 4,000 apartment units. Most of the properties that we manage are in Minnesota. We also have a small portfolio in Indiana and Wisconsin. Again, Real Estate Equities is a premier management company, and our values are ownership, right attitude, knowledge, and integrity. We've developed throughout the company's history of 50 years in excess of 70 projects comprising of more than 12,000 housing units over the last 50 years. And we develop and operate all aspects of the properties that we build. The unit mix, so we're proposing 72 one-bedroom units, one bed, one baths, 61 two-bed, two-bath units, and 15 three-bed, two-bath units. Total unit count, 148 units. Total parking on site is 298 stalls with a parking ratio of 2.01 stalls per unit. Unit finishes, these are examples that are comparable to what we'll be building here at this project. Spring House is a project that we built in St. Paul that has high-end finishes. We do luxury vinyl plank flooring, hard surface countertops, stainless steel appliances, high-quality cabinetry. So that just gives you a representation of two different styles of two different projects that we've done that are comparable to ultimately what we'll be doing here at this project. Common area finishes, again, that's a representation of a party room at one of the projects that we recently did. Again, stainless steel appliances, hard surface countertops, high-quality cabinets. We also have state-of-the-art fitness centers and large community club rooms in these projects, which we're also planning to have in this project as well. Some of the sustainable building elements that we'll be implementing for this project, one, LED light fixtures, two, Energy Star rated appliances and windows, three, high-efficiency mechanical systems, low-flow water fixtures, low VOC paints and adhesives, water-efficient irrigation systems, as well as photovoltaic, I just totally slandered that, sorry, ready roof design. So we're planning to have the roofs, frankly, ready for potentially that at a later date. So development overview, unit amenities, again, kind of redundant here, but high-quality cabinets, hard surface countertops. We have in-unit washer and dryer in our units. We have 9-foot ceiling height. Again, community amenities, outdoor grilling patio, community patio grilling station, fitness center, and an interior community room in the building. This slide shows kind of the variety of income levels that we'll be serving at this project. Again, this project's being developed as a workforce housing project that's a mixed income project. So 40% of the units at the project will be limited to 60% of the area median income rent levels, which offer a monthly discounted rate of about $300 to $400 in comparison to other market rate properties. The rents on one bedrooms for max 60% rents are $1,103. For two bedrooms, they're $1,322, and for three bedrooms, they're $1,523. In addition to that, 35% of the units are going to be restricted to 80% AMI. So the rents reflected there at one bedrooms are $1,520, at two bedrooms they're $2,048. Those are the max 80% rents. Right now we're underwriting slightly lower rents for the 80% rents, so we're expecting those to maybe be $100 to $200 below what's reflected on there. But again, those are the max rents for that. And then the remaining 25% of the units in the building are going to be unrestricted market rate units. So it is truly a mixed income product type that we're building that hits a lot of different income levels. Some of the additional benefits to the city of Maplewood. This project is going to provide a highly necessary mixed income housing product that will strengthen the overall new construction multifamily housing supply for the city of Maplewood. ESRI demographics estimates that the project is going to provide an increase of $3.9 million in consumer spending within the city of Maplewood. And in terms of direct fees to the city, the project development budget estimates about $430,000 in direct funds to the city of Maplewood through the various impact fees that the city will be charging. And with that, I'll let you ask any questions. And we have two people from Cass Wilson, our architect here, and then two people from Sambatech as well to help address any questions that you may have as well, so.
Any questions for the applicant? I have one question. You said the roof is going to be structurally ready for photovoltaic panels. So when do you propose to install those panels?
So just to clarify, we're building the infrastructure as part of the project for that. We're not planning on actually building the panels yet. If we do it, we may do that at a later date, but.
So does that just mean the electrical connections?
Yeah, that would be to eventually potentially have solar on the roofs, which we would do ultimately, which would fuel some of the common area electrical expenses for the building. So we build the infrastructure in the roof so it's compatible to do that.
So when you select roofing material, what is your desired roofing material so that, you're not, if you decide to do that in 8 or 10 years, are you going with a higher end roofing material that'll be compatible for overlaying?
I'll let Petro probably address that specific question just in terms of the roofing material. So he can do it better than I can.
No worries. Petro Megats, Cost Wilson Architects, 1301 American Boulevard, Bloomington. Yes, the materials selected for the roof would be a 4-tab, 25-year asphalt shingle. We will also have tracks built in to allow for future adaptation or adding on of photovoltaics in the future as demand is necessary.
So going back to my earlier question, was a site plan looked at that would eliminate that east parking?
The east parking? You want me to-
Yeah, you can,
Yep,
we
yep.
can both kind of answer.
Yeah, at this point, we were, again, as the planners and staff have mentioned, our intention of the east parking is really just for visitors to kind of isolate the two drives. We did look at it initially, but it actually started to impact the height of the building and having to, because that's the highest point in the building, we would have to lift the building even a little higher, which again, trying to be sensitive to the neighbors, they want things a little bit lower and just fitting it within the context, but.
Could you have extended the underground parking so the parking gets extended to that area?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I just want to comment on the general design of the building at 3 stories. Most projects that we're building today are, 4, if not 5 stories. So we intentionally designed this building to be more within the zoning code for approval and to be more in line with what we thought the city wanted. And one of the things that's beneficial to doing a 3-story building versus a 4 is that we've got a longer footprint. So we actually have in excess of a 1-to-1 parking ratio underground, where most of the projects that we're building today, and we're building a number of these types of projects throughout the suburbs, are about a 0.8 parking ratio underground. So the ratio here, frankly, is higher than most projects that we're doing. And the overall parking ratio, which is, I think, 2.01 per unit, is one of the highest parking ratios overall that we have for projects like this that we're building. So we definitely think, A, it's parked sufficiently, and B, that there's sufficient parking underground. To expand the parking beyond the footprint of the building, it adds significant cost to the overall construction budget, which frankly make the numbers incredibly difficult to do. I mean, this project, it would be financially, I think, infeasible to do that if we had to.
Mike, can you put up that site plan again once, please? Okay, I'm looking at the east parking there. What would stop you from moving the curb cut to the west and get it a little bit further away from the intersection?
Yeah, why don't you guys?
Josh McKinney, Sambatech, 12800 Whitewater Drive, Minnetonka, Minnesota. We actually had explored that curb cut at a number of different locations. We felt that given the location and relative to the intersection to the south, to actually split the difference or get it further away from that intersection would prevent future left turn impacts to one another. On other projects that we've done where we've offset or have more of a partial offset of intersections, we typically do get a comment back from traffic that would indicate that we'd have future collisions, and they would ask us to move it further away from those intersections. That's the reason why that is located where it's at. There's really, could we shift it 9 feet? Sure. But it's not, I don't know if that's kind of the shift that you're looking for.
Well, I was looking for a shift where it basically shifts over, 27 feet, so it lines up with the driveway.
Yeah, and once again, I think the traffic folks would probably have something to say in terms of a positional relation for collision prevention in the future. What ends up happening is the 2 left turns conflict.
Did the city traffic engineer take a look at that?
Chair, members of the commission, yes. So looking at their site plan, if they were to move it as far west as they could right now, it would be similar to what they described, where it would be an offset intersection, or a partially offset intersection. And we did feel that this was striking that balance of being far enough away from London Lane not to have a backup along there. I'm sorry, far enough away from Lower Afton not to have a backup, and providing enough separation between the driveway and Sterling Street so that you didn't have a driveway that was, or entrance that was slightly offset.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No, if I'm looking at that, just scaling it off of the parking stall sizes, there's probably room for 12 cars between Lower Afton and that entrance. That lot's gonna fill up really quick.
And Mike, this project would require those 12 cars, right? How many cars are there in the east parking lot? It's more than 12, isn't it?
Yeah, there's gotta be. Is that the front entrance then of the building? In that roundabout?
Yeah, it is.
And really, the intent of that front entrance is just to be as a visitor parking. It's not really intended for residents. The majority of residents will be coming up on the west side of the site
Yeah.
and underground parking.
Well, the reality is, if you provide 2 parking lots for a site, people are going to come whenever and wherever it's convenient, So it's quite feasible that dwelling unit owners sometimes do park on that east side also.
I mean, one of the things that we could do is probably designate some of those stalls as visitor parking to avoid that issue. Another thing that we do just in general with parking is we monitor it, obviously, for our residents to make sure that our residents are the ones that are parking in our lots. So there's ways to mitigate some of that.
And you feel that, how many stalls are there, 15, 18,
Yeah.
Chair and board, 24.
24?
24.
And you do see a need to have those 24?
Well, we do. I mean, part of the overall parking requirement of the city's code, I believe, is to have a one-to-one underground parking requirement, and then to have one-to-one surface, right? So a lot of the thought that went into this design was to meet the city's code requirements for parking. And in designing it this way, I think we're just meeting it or exceeding it by 2 stalls, right? So, yeah, I mean, that was a lot of the thought process that went into that. Do I think it's needed? Based on historical projects that we've built recently, I think it's always better to have parking because it's the one thing you can't recreate. You know what I mean? The last thing you want to do is build a project that's underparked because it's very hard to add additional parking. Now here, you could argue maybe you could, I guess, but we feel it's a good design. And again, we think that a lot of the parking that's going to probably happen there will be mostly visitor parking. And yeah, there will probably be some residents that also do park there, but the majority of people will use the other main entrance.
Can you go through the building materials for the exterior facade? I know you've given the roof a little bit of detail. I just kind of want to see how that compares to what you're doing in the rest of the building.
You guys want us to bring up the materials, or how would you like this?
I can see the stone sample. It's more the, I would say the, you know, the stone sample sits there with the other cladding materials.
And while you have that, Mike, could you put up the elevations also at the same time?
This is the CMU.
Yep.
Is the CMU just a base, wainscot of, is it,
This is where the,
how tall is that wainscot around the garage?
At the main entrance, it's about a foot or so exposed, and as you get down to the garage entry, about 10 feet.
and this is the page.
It's quite tall, yeah.
The one side of the building towards the north is where you're gonna see a lot of this exposed. What is the landscape plan around that then? Is there landscaping along that? I don't have that landscape plan right up in front of me. That was the one area where it just seemed to be a long run in the transition between that block. And I'm just having that right here. That transition is just a really, it's almost like there should be something that breaks that linear massive CMU block up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
I don't know what that transition detail looks like. If it's even just to, you know, where maybe there's, it carries some of these vertical, you know, bands.
it's metal. Metal could be an option to
I
break
don't
it
know
up.
what it is, but it's just a long run that really detracts. I mean, the rest of the building isn't an attractive design.
If we were to go a different color with the CMU, would that help?
What's the material above the CMU?
It's gonna be that stone. So that stone would be here.
Yeah.
And then you see that repeat itself throughout, and it goes up these towers there. But then it's just like, and you know, we've got nice transition between materials. I don't know what,
Yeah, we were trying to blend some of the warms from here. So, and again, this isn't final by any means, we're still, yeah, it's gonna take a little while as pricing comes in. And when you're referring to breaking it up, you're referring to, the base here.
this base.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if there was a way that that could get,
You do use some metal in the facade, don't you?
Oh, yes, correct.
Is there a possibility of having a strip of metal with the same color be the transition piece
Between the CMU
between
and-
the CMU and this?
We can look at that, we can explore it.
because right now, there's not really anything represented or you're rendered there.
Yeah, we
So
could
what
look
the-
at also just using maybe a different color CMU water table or something of that nature, if we can provide that. Right?
And then, this is the railing materials.
Correct, yep, element, yep, that's your balcony.
Okay, the balcony and that, and then this is the
That's the
The-
body of the building.
body of the building.
Yeah.
And those are in vertical panels?
Yep.
Okay, and these are the accents around the stone.
I kind of like the color of the body, that darker gray there. That's why I was suggesting perhaps using it as the transition piece. or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I could see, that would really break up some of these lines where it intersects with the stone to kind of, I think it might be a more attractive transition.
Does it have to be metal, or can we explore a masonry option, just again, to stay consistent?
I would prefer to be metal since you already have metal on the project.
Okay. So with that,
Have some sort of a coping material or, okay, I'll hand these back to you. So one other question then that I have, so obviously excited that you're wanting to eventually get to solar on this. You're putting higher end materials on the rest of this facade and asphalt shingles. 3M does a study every year. even though it's got a 25-year shingle, the average life of that shingle is probably 14 or 15 years. And then when you go to actually put on the solar, you're going to have to put boots around all of those because there's no mounting brackets for asphalt shingles. I think it's a little bit short-sighted to do asphalt. If the goal is to get to solar, I think that's where the timeline of when you want to do solar. If the goal is to do solar 15 years from now, putting an asphalt roof is probably right, because then you'll tear that whole roof off. You'll replace that whole roof when it comes time to actually put the solar on. But if you're going to do, the solar array in 5 years, it's really wasteful to put asphalt shingles on that you're probably going to tear off when you do that. Have you considered metal roofing of some sort? Weight-wise, it's lighter than the asphalt shingles, and then they all come with brackets that you can retrofit when the time comes to put solar on, and they're going to be 50-plus year roofs. Just as a thought, if obviously you guys brought solar into the equation.
Yeah, and I should honestly clarify that. I mean, we've been doing solar on all of our recent flat roof projects, right? And many of those projects are low-income housing tax credit developments, so we do larger workforce housing projects. This project with a pitch roofed, the likelihood that we'll eventually do solar is not that high. So I don't want to oversell the fact that we're probably going to do solar here, because the reality is we don't know, but I don't want to oversell that at all, because there's a decent chance that we actually don't end up doing solar here, so.
In regards to the metal roofing, if you go with the standing seam or versus a asphalt shingle.
Yeah, there's multiple different metal
Yeah,
options.
You can do the interlock systems as well. I mean, it's quite a bit more costly than doing an asphalt shingle, and trying to be more cost effective on a construction side to try to keep these rents as low as possible. It's, in my opinion, it just would be way too expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of just to speak to the design too of the roof, I mean, we did a pitched roof, right, to we thought it would blend in better with the neighborhood, and give it more of a residential feel, because that's kind of the feel of the location, we feel. If we'd done a flat roof option at 3 stories, I don't even think we would have needed a conditional use permit. We could have just been within the entire zoning code, but we did design it this way intentionally to have it kind of fit within the neighborhood. So just to kind of speak to the design of the roof.
Okay.
Because a lot of our projects are flat roofs.
So the weight of future solar panels, what is that, 10 pounds a square foot? So you have done something structurally, whether your trusses are spaced a little bit closer or whatever, you
Yes,
spent.
no, the trusses will be upsized, and they'll be actually a little beefier to make that weight accommodation, correct. So again, in the future, who knows? I mean, 20, 50 years from now, the panels might be so cost-effective that it would work, and then just depends how it performs. We just want to give these guys all the options they can.
It's just so we have the infrastructure in place that if we decide to at a later day, at some point down the road, we can do it.
Okay.
Because it's really hard to reinforce the roof structurally to do it at a later date.
Or even run conduit, yeah.
Or even run the conduit, yeah, all that. Yeah.
How is the roof water discharged? Rain on the
Civil
roof?
question.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
what I can answer.
again, it's being collected through gutters, downspouts. Downspouts are connected to underground storm systems.
So I'm not seeing the downspouts on the elevation.
Yes, the conceptual at this point, but there will be downspouts on this project.
Would they align with the white portion or the black metal? Where do you foresee those downspouts coming down?
Again, we would have to really do a full analysis on the facade to figure out where those would go down. But they would be color matched, so they wouldn't stand out. The idea would be they would match what's the siding on the facade.
Okay. Anything else, Jason?
I don't think I have anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to admit, I did not read all the comments from the neighbors. Maybe you did, but one thing
A lot
that
of
did stick out for me was the traffic, more so than anything else.
Yeah, just the movement around.
And the thing is, as one person said, London Lane was always designed for low density. It was never designed, Connemara came, and then the additional development on the east side came, on the west side.
West side, yeah.
Now we got this. So my concern is that due to the lack of any sidewalk there on the north side of London.
Connecting up on London Lane.
Yeah. So what I would like to suggest is that the applicant install sidewalk on the north side of London, at least going a few feet to the property line. Mike, you said the setback was, what, 195 feet? I didn't quite understand that.
Chair and board, setback to what?
No, to the property line on the west.
The requirement is 100 feet, and the building would be set back 159 feet
Setback to from the property line.
from the property line to edge of building,
So the
correct?
property line you're talking about is the one between Connemara and this property line?
Yep. Yes, yes, Chair and board.
The reason I'm suggesting the sidewalk, Jason, in addition, is people using the park on the south side.
Oh,
Right now, there is no sidewalk either on the north side or the south side.
And Chair and Board, I'll just, Steve and I didn't specifically mention it during our presentation. In the engineering review, which is a proposed condition of approval, the engineering review did mention a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk shall be added along the properties, should be apostrophe S here, London Lane frontage within the public right-of-way. So we're tracking with that thought as well, that there would be a sidewalk along London Lane on the north side.
And the sidewalk would curve around and join the crosswalk along Lower Afton there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
and was that in our approval or that was in a separate?
No, it's referenced in your design
Okay.
review approval when it says to approve, the condition of approval for the
Oh,
engineering
I got
review.
you. Yep. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So for our approval, Mike, we've got section 2.01 and section,
Chair and Board, you're looking
3.01.
at attachment 3
yep,
of the staff report, and yeah, that would go, the conditions would be in section 3, as you mentioned, 1 through 12. So it crosses three pages.
You want to take a stab at a,
yeah, so 13 would be that band, or that metal band between the CMU and the
yeah.
The only one that I have is that metal band as an addition, so I'll make a motion to approve the plans, date stamped, September 3rd, I believe is the date stamp on the plans. Section 3.01, items 1 through 12, with an additional item 13 to have the applicant submit revised elevations showing the color-matched downspouts, along with a transition band between the CMU block and the upper building materials, particularly to ensure we have a nice transition.
I'll accept that, but I just have a clarification comment before we go ahead and vote on this thing.
Yep.
Along with the sidewalk that's been called out, is there a crosswalk across London Lane that is proposed from the park to the sidewalk?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, there's an existing crosswalk across, I'm sorry, you're talking London Lane, right? I don't believe that there's a proposed crosswalk at this time.
Is there any issue with having one installed?
Chair, members of the commission, I would have to have that evaluated against our crossing policy of whether one would be required there or not.
Because right now, they have to walk up to Lower Afton Road, cross there, and then walk back to the park.
Correct. Right now, crossing London, there's no sidewalk leading up on Sterling up to that intersection. There are shoulders along London there. I think they're like about 5 foot wide shoulders, but there isn't a sidewalk, like you said, going right up to that connection across Lower Afton.
The thought is, because there's no crosswalk, as you say, people are walking willy-nilly on the east side or the west side of Sterling. If there was a crosswalk, it would at least give an opportunity for somebody to go and use the crosswalk on that side.
Correct.
So if you could please make that, take that up to, is it to the city engineer?
That would be me.
Okay,
Yep.
that's you.
Yep.
Okay, that's easy. Okay.
So that's item 14, is to review a crosswalk from Sterling to the
Right.
development.
And I would prefer that crosswalk to be on the west side of Sterling, not the east side of Sterling.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we can certainly evaluate that as it relates to our crossing policy, so.
Okay, I accept that amendment.
Okay? We have a motion and an amendment. We'll call it to vote. What is your,
I just want to make sure we're understanding. Are we putting another condition of approval that's going to be ultimately forwarded on to planning commission and council that ultimately is a city council, or sorry, a city engineer review? We can't do the sidewalk or kind of the crosswalk across the street, right? We're not ultimately responsible for that. That's on the city, you're directing city staff, but through a comment.
I think
So I
the
just want to
way,
make sure I understand what we're asking here.
way I'm seeing it, and you, obviously, as the engineer, you comment that the sidewalk is their responsibility.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, what we had in our report was a recommendation to have a sidewalk located on the north side of London by this property to tie into the crossing across Lower Afton. We did not recommend at this time a separate crosswalk to Sterling, as right now there's no pedestrian facilities along Sterling that run north and south.
But still, the sidewalk is part of their development of the property, correct?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yes.
Yes. So is it, are you clear?
No, I understand. I'm saying we shouldn't be adding an additional condition for city staff to study a crosswalk. We're fine putting the sidewalk in per the original condition. It's just a matter of, if the city were to recommend a crosswalk be required, sure, we'll accommodate it. It's just, I'm not sure what you're asking us to do with the additional condition.
No, are we even okay, Mike, in putting a condition that is not part of the applicant's thing, but is part of the city?
Because ultimately, there's
requirement?
going to be a planning commission meeting that this would then pass on to, and I feel like that should be a part of the condition of the project approval.
Yeah, Chair and Board, your recommendations tonight get forwarded directly to the city council. And so what I would do, I think it's completely within the realm to add that condition. And what Mr. Love would then do is, I think have that evaluation done potentially before we go to the city council so that we're able to report to the city council with definitive recommendation from staff on what should happen there. And then that would be a clear result for the applicant to know what's expected of them.
I'm accepting of that.
Okay. Let's put it to vote. What's your,
I vote yes.
I vote yes with the amendments. So the application is passed. Good luck to you. Next item, Mike.
Yes, Chair and Board. The next item on your agenda is a design review for 1875 East Shore Drive. Again, we have a few slides here to walk through our discussion tonight. This item also will be going to the Planning Commission for a public hearing later this evening. They will be looking at a conditional use permit for a shoreland planned unit development and the preliminary and final plats. This group will specifically be looking at the design review of this project. This project is a proposed 60-unit senior housing cooperative building located on what is currently vacant land. The overall site size is 2.14 acres. The existing controls, the future land use is high density residential, which allows up to 25 units per acre. And it is zoned R3 multiple dwellings. So again, the official controls are in place to support the proposed development before you tonight. The applicant is proposing to utilize density credits as permitted by the city code. The city's R3 ordinance promotes using density credits to ensure underground parking and what it calls high-rise units. So you can see by the use of underground parking on this site and the units on what would be the fourth floor adds 0.69 acres to the overall site size. And again, using that calculation with the 60 proposed units, the density is meeting comprehensive plan requirements as set forth by the current document. The conditional use permit, again, which the Planning Commission will be looking at later this evening, it's a conditional use permit for shoreland plan unit development. That plan unit development allows for a unified site design and the flexibility of certain zoning standards that help the sites meet the intention of the code, but is more reactive to the specific site conditions. So I have a few areas highlighted here. There's a couple pinch points. Again, the site itself is a unique shape. On the west side of the site, there's, if we go to the northwest site, there's a corner where the decks themselves do not meet that 20-foot setback. They come within just the corner of that deck is 10 feet setback from that side property line. The building itself, the interior space, does meet that 20-foot setback. So they're looking for some flexibility for that deck space. As you go south along that west property line, there's a series of 9, I believe, parking spaces that are within 18 feet of the property line as opposed to the 20-foot requirement. And then again, pushing it as the most southern yellow circle, that drive lane comes as close as 18 feet again, as opposed to that 20 feet. When evaluating that criteria, staff looked at the existing conditions on the west side of the existing developed parcel. There's non-conforming parking lot area. And then as you head north, undeveloped area. And then again, so using those site conditions along with the unique shape of the parcel, we felt those were minor considerations when evaluating the site plan against this PUD. On the east side, the applicant is proposing a canopy that would come within 9 feet, so setback 21 feet from the East Shore Drive right-of-way as opposed to 30 feet, which the building is meeting that 30-foot setback requirement. East Shore Drive has a particularly larger right-of-way area than we would see on other roads. So again, this gave staff comfort in recommending approval of these flexibility setbacks standards. Looking at the building height, this is a 4-story building, so anything through above 3 stories, as we talked about in the last item, does need specific approval. This is a flat roof structure, and so the building itself is just over 44.5 feet tall to the top of that flat roof. As you read through the staff report, there is a grade difference going on with the site, so that does bump up those building heights at certain points to just under 54 feet. I did want to just provide a comparison, just if you're familiar with that neighborhood.
I am. I live right there.
Okay.
I run by this all the time, and I was surprised that this was flat because the buildings adjacent on both sides have pitched roofs.
Yep, pitched roofs. And then if we go to the Frost English, so the 2 newest developments at Frost and English intersection, those are both 4-story buildings. The multifamily building that's fronts Frost is 43 feet in height. And then that senior housing building, which is also 4 stories, that kind of fronts English, is 53 feet in height. Now, keep in mind, those are both pitched roof structures, and that height is measured to the midpoint of each of those roofs, so the overall height is even higher to both of those structures. So just to give some context to the general neighborhood and some other projects that have been recently built. Just a couple more items that will be reviewed as part of the plan unit development. The applicant is looking at a couple concrete patios, again, in that area generally where that canopy would be located on the east side of the building, again, signified by the green circle on the north portion of this site. That concrete patio would come within, I'm sorry, had this right, within, I'll start with the south, because that's coming right to me. The south, the circle on the south portion, they're looking at a circle patio with a pergola. The pergola would be within 18 feet of the south property line and 9 feet from the east and west property lines, and similar footprint, obviously, for the patio itself.
That's that lower green circle.
The lower
right now.
green circle, taking advantage of the site itself and its location adjacent somewhat to Lake Phalen. And then the larger patio on the east side of the building along East Shore Drive would be, I'm sorry, I'm just at a loss. I can look at it when I'm done here and get that specific setback, but it's within the required building setback. Now, I should mention, we don't have specified setbacks for patios themselves. Our setbacks are geared towards structures, but we did want to memorialize the fact that these patios would be located within building setback areas as part of the plan unit development process. And the last item here is the open space. A shoreline PUD by ordinance states that it must have at least 50% open space. The site is proposing 40%, as you see throughout the site itself. The applicant does have the ability to work with the city engineer to get impervious surface bonus up to 20% for stormwater management techniques that go above and beyond what our baseline standards are. So there is a pathway for the developer to get to the 60% impervious, and that's, again, being memorialized within the plan unit development here. And then they would be required to continue to work with the city engineer on those stormwater management techniques. To the west of this site, there is a Managed B wetland. Managed B wetlands require a 75-foot buffer. That buffer can come down to a minimum of 50 feet, as long as the overall averaging is 75 feet. The corner, again, that northwest corner of the building does come within 50 feet, and the grading of the structure will be. So the 50-foot buffer would be maintained, and then when you average it as you go away from that corner of the building, the applicant is maintaining that 75-foot buffer requirement. That standard has been reviewed by the city's engineering department and the environmental planner to ensure compliance. So again, the applicant's site and grading plans are meeting all the wetland requirements. Again, one more item we'll just go through here quickly. The Planning Commission will be considering preliminary plat and final plat. This site was originally part of that parcel to the north, the shores at Lake Phalen, the senior housing development. It was this site specifically was subdivided for future development. When it was subdivided, it was made designated as an outlot, which is a typical development procedure. And then that's essentially a holding parcel for development. And what this platting process does is ensure that all minimum lot design standards are being met and that the lot is indeed developable. Staff has confirmed that both those standards are met and does not have any concerns with approving the plats. Now we jump into design review for your review tonight. The site is going to be accessed off a single drive, East Shore Drive, again on the south side of the building here. The building would run along East Shore Drive and the north boundary of the site, and then the surface parking lot wraps to the south and west of the building. The proposed building would be constructed of the following materials. This was outlined in your staff report. It's on the slide here. The applicant is present again tonight and can talk more specifically on the proposed materials and was asked to bring in samples and building samples and color samples. All floor area requirements are being met as outlined by city code requirements and then the photometric plan that was submitted, there's just one small area that exceeds code requirements, so the applicant would be required to submit a revised plan that meets intensity requirements. Again, looking at parking, much like the last project, 2 spaces per unit, half of those being covered. So for this 60-unit project, 120 spaces are required. The project would provide 130 spaces, with 95 of those in the underground garage and 35 in the surface lot. Looking at the landscaping plan, the applicant would be removing 75 trees, but planting 145 new trees. That standard still does not meet the tree replacement requirements. To do so, they need to add another 25.5 caliber inches, or the developer has the option to pay into the city tree fund. So again, you can pay into that fund or add another 25.5 inches, either larger trees or additional trees to meet that standard. Numerous shrubs, perennials, and grasses being planted throughout the site, as you saw in the landscaping plan. And then same standard that we want to see applied here that we talked about in the last project along the west property line, with that sensitivity to the existing multifamily building to the west, the southwest. We want to make sure that the applicant is meeting the screening requirement for headlight glare, and again, must meet that 6 foot, 80% opaqueness ordinance requirements. Plan unit developments require comprehensive sign plans. The applicant's plans included one monument sign. That sign needs to be located on the property itself, set back 10 feet from all property lines. Approval of this comprehensive sign plan has been built into the design review resolution that you'll be making a recommendation on tonight. The city sent letters to the 20 property owners within 500 feet, so we sent the neighborhood survey, and then another mailing for the public hearing notice that's later tonight. In your staff report, we received 1 reply. Since, the report went out, we received an additional reply, and that will be included with the staff report to the council. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the design review resolution that's included with your packet tonight. And I'll just mention one more time, the applicant's here to answer questions and present their project to you. So thank you.
Comments for staff?
I don't have any for staff. I have some for the applicant.
Is the applicant here? Please step forward, state your name, address, and tell us about your project.
Good evening. My name is Mick Conlon. I'm the developer. I'm the president of Gramercy Development Companies. Address is 2220 St. Anthony Parkway, Minneapolis. We're excited to be here in Maplewood. This is our second project for the American Cooperative. Gramercy Development Companies is the developer. The American Cooperative is the brand. Our first project is in Anoka. We just broke ground at the beginning of this month after about a year of pre-selling that project. This will be a very similar project. It's a 60-unit for-sale senior ownership project. The cooperative model is a very attractive model for seniors. It's a 62 plus. One member of the household needs to be 62. For seniors, it means ownership after they want to downsize from their single-family home. So it's an important component when you're talking about a mix of senior housing within a city to offer ownership, and that's exactly what we're bringing here. Essentially, what the owners of the building are buying into is shares in a not-for-profit company, and that not-for-profit company owns the entire building as well as all the fixtures, the underground parking, of course, and then the actual units. The appliances within the home plan are also owned by the cooperative as well. So if there's an issue in the future with respect to replacement, wear over time, that's actually paid for by the cooperative, so the members don't experience out-of-pocket costs for that. And it's budgeted into the reserves ahead of time, so we don't have assessments in a cooperative setting. It's all built into beforehand. So it's once seniors kind of go through the process of doing the math on this, it becomes a very attractive, predictable model into the future as you're looking about budgeting your future expenses as a senior. Our shares appreciate at a fixed rate over time, so this is a limited equity model, which means that this project will be relatively affordable into the future. So our shares appreciate at 3% per year compounded, so they're not subject to the market fluctuations. There's less, because of that, there's less speculation. This is owner occupied, so you have less folks buying and flipping like you would in a condo setting, or potentially buying and renting out to individuals to make a profit. So this is about community, it's about ownership, and keeping seniors within Maplewood. So we're excited to bring this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I have a team here from Civil Site Group. My sister Kathleen Conlon-Joyce from Gramercy as well. And we also have Mindy from Cost Wilson Architects. Although we're using the same architectural firm, it's not the same building, a little bit different design. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So this may be just a screening, and I don't know, this even could go back to that. When they come in that entrance towards the parking garage, they're elevated because there's a wall that's going to be on the backside of that drive, and their lights are going to be flashing into the second-story windows of that adjacent building. So yes, or a little bit higher, but those other two buildings are quite a bit lower than this site. What is the screening there? I guess I didn't really pick up on that in the landscape. If it's done with landscaping, or if there's a fence just in that corner of that drive aisle.
So, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
Matt Pavick, Civil Site Group, 4931 West 35th Street.
Staff,
San Luis
maybe
Park.
just go to the C2.0 if you could.
At this point, we hadn't shown screening in that spot, but we're going to be adding that as a comment that we received recently from city staff to talk about that issue. So we will be adding a low shrub style headlight screen plantings along that edge, as well as along the parking stalls on the south end, so that any cars going in that direction, swinging either way, will have adequate screening for the headlights.
Yeah, exiting from the ramp isn't going to be, or exiting the site isn't going to be bad because they're just shooting towards the lake. It's anybody entering.
Correct.
And for whatever those shrubs are, they're going to have to be evergreens, and they're going to have to be, they're going to have a little bit of height to them, because when you come off, you're coming off at a higher point, and then kind of.
So just so the building to the north there, that's an actual parking garage for the apartment building. To the site to the west. So there's the apartment building itself, and then to the north of there is correct. That's the covered parking garage.
So those aren't units.
There's no units
Okay.
with windows.
Yeah. Our building is entirely north of the adjacent.
Of the adjacent building, they're not gonna catch the end of that at all with lights as they come in that drive aisle?
I think the concern, and I spoke with the adjacent property owner's attorney, who had submitted a comment to staff. And we spoke on the phone today, and I think the concern was the additional parking that we placed. Is it 9 stalls on that? Yeah, 9 stalls that we had placed on the south end of our site. As folks are pulling into those, potentially you've got headlights that are shining into the apartment building. And I agree, and I believe staff, the comments in the
Oh,
report
yeah,
indicated.
I see where those, right around
Right.
the bottom,
Right.
because nobody's
So-
gonna back into those.
Pardon?
Because
No
nobody's
one's
gonna
backing
back
into those, no. So from a screening perspective, I think if we were to add in, and that might kill 2 birds with 1 stone as you have people driving in, but that's definitely gonna be needed there.
Yeah, obviously, there's a great view to the lake, so it doesn't have to be like 20-foot tall pine trees, but I think, probably around that bend and just making sure that we cover that. Yeah, because as people exit that parking garage at nighttime, they're gonna be driving out, there's gonna be it's a short little stint before they take a left to exit. Those lights are gonna be shining up towards that building as well.
They'll be shining down because it's
So it's
actually
kinda
the grade
down.
shifts down
Grade
out of the
shifts
garage,
down out of
down
the
to the
garage.
drive lane and then out. But again, I think the issue is if people are parking in those 9 spaces, it's the same point, right? It's the handling the lighting coming off of that.
Staff, would we have to put that into like a point for staff to review that screening plan, or is that already?
Chair and board, yes, it's already in your design review recommendations that before a building permit would be issued, that the applicant would submit to staff essentially an exhibit showing that they would be meeting the screening requirements.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for answering those questions on that.
We were shown several areas where on the west side, you are less than the 20 feet to the property line. And personally, I'm not concerned about the parking spaces being 18 feet or whatever from the, but I am a little concerned about that deck on the north side and the west side. Is it possible to reconfigure that deck so you are a little bit further away from the property line?
So the way that those units are stacked, and I'll let Mindy probably speak to this as well, but if that, it begins to shift around the entire building footprint as those decks are based off of the sunrooms that we have on those home plans. But Mindy, if you have any comments you'd like to share.
Sure. Generally, there's one unit that wraps around that end of the building, and the bedrooms are kind of located to the north and western sides of the building, and then the like living room, dining room, kitchen space, and sunroom are all on the kind of west and south portion, and the deck is adjacent to all those living spaces. And so shifting it around doesn't work quite so well. We tried to keep the entire footprint of the occupied spaces out of that 20 feet. It's just the projection of the corner of the deck that encroaches slightly, and it faces a wetland that would never be developed, so we didn't really feel like it was going to be impinging on an adjacent property so much. It'd be like kind of an open, airy area, not like a solid mass of the building.
I was not suggesting shifting the whole building. All I was suggesting was just looking at that one balcony or whatever right there. And maybe half-sizing it. I think you have 4 floors, right? And it's repeating on 4 floors. And maybe keeping the size on the second, third, and fourth floors and just reducing the size on the first floor.
That wouldn't really work structurally because we have to be able to support all levels, so you'd still have a post in the corner coming down.
So you couldn't have a post, I don't know, 6 feet to the east and cantilever it out?
Likely not. It would, usually there's kind of a 2/3, 1/3 rule when you're talking about cantilevers as just a rule of thumb, so you couldn't basically cantilever half of the deck.
Okay. It looks like, Jason, because of that location and what is to the west, you're not that much concerned?
Yeah, I don't think I'm concerned as much about that detail, so this would be this corner of the building.
Yeah.
And there's a retaining wall to support this parking lot that will be along this side. There's not gonna be any sidewalk or pedestrian access around that side of that swamp, because the topography for that slopes down that way into the swamp.
Yeah, you'd never have anyone over there. It's not developable.
It's like
Yeah.
I don't think that person's gonna sit on their deck, because they're gonna be in the mosquitoes.
On the 4th floor, they will.
4th floor,
And we
yeah.
also have the option to screen in the porches, so.
Yeah, you'll probably be screening in those porches. Do you have the building materials?
Yes.
And then question for the applicant. I see there's a rooftop deck off that one side. Obviously, there's a fantastic view from
Yes.
that spot. What's the limiting factor to the design space? I feel like
Thank
60
you.
units, that deck isn't sized for this development.
Believe me, it would be 4 times as large if it was up to me. I've been told that for code purposes, we're limited on the size that the deck can be, even though I've begged and pleaded with our architectural firm to allow us to make that a little bit bigger. So, totally agree.
Let me step in. We're a type 5 A construction. If we were to include a larger patio up there, we would be kicked into a type 3A construction, which would be considerably more expensive.
The decking
For
and
the,
the
well, the whole
structural.
structure gets rated differently.
Okay.
So,
You should upgrade to a better structure.
Is it a concrete roof?
Is it concrete? No.
no, it would either be EPDM or TPO. It's a flat roof.
Okay.
It's a wood
what's
structure.
Limiting the size then.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. One time to build the building.
Okay, so, I don't know, do you want me to show these from back here or walk up?
You can bring that one up, and then the stone sample you
So-
can just put behind the,
Rendering, the other, and the presentation was the other building. You see the flat roof, you've got the darker color here is that navy blue on that side. These bays are a shake siding with some panel inset in the white, and then the really faint gray trim, and some dark bronze
this is the
window.
coping that's around, or
Yep.
the,
Yep, the coping will match the window surrounds and such. All of our exterior mechanical louvers are painted to match the adjacent siding, so they'll blend in. And all the windows and railings, doors will be that kind of dark bronze color.
What is this material down at grade?
So, yep, question? This up here, so you can see. That portion that you pointed to is really just where the garage sticks out, where the grade slopes down towards the lake. So we'll have this white rock-based veneer, or not veneer, load-bearing masonry with a color-matched grout, and then above that is this dome. So they'll kind of blend together.
But I'm seeing that the planes are a little different, so
That's a little bit of an optical illusion. They're in plane.
so it looks like there's a transition band a little bit
Yep.
farther down here. Are we
Yeah.
carrying
Where it
that?
transitions to the siding, transition band, and we'll have a coping that kicks on. Stone. I don't see any of this.
so will you have that transition band here also, or no?
We'll have some bit of transition band just because of the undulation of the stone and the CMU aren't going to be exactly the same. So we'll have a little bit of a coping edge.
And this is the black, this
This color right here is that
is the
navy color.
navy color. Where is this?
That's the color of the windows and the
Oh,
railings.
okay.
Yeah, any more?
I'm good.
You can carry that away.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Regarding these patios that you have on the east side and one on the round one on the south side, will there be any fixed landscape or exterior furniture?
I believe to this, yeah, we haven't talked about any fixed furniture on the east patio, the one that faces East Shore Drive. I don't know that we've, on the southern patio with the pergola, if we've discussed any fixed furniture down there.
Maybe some benches.
Yeah, I can envision benches there to allow, the members to come down, enjoy a sunset, and spend time near the lake with family.
So Mike, I assume here again, the city engineer has reviewed the plans for fire truck access all around?
Chair and board, yes, the engineering department has reviewed this project, as has the fire marshal. And they've been in communication with the applicant, the fire marshal specifically, in reviewing this project.
Any other comments, Jason?
I'm just rereading the screening, to submit to staff a screening plan detailing that all ordinance requirements are met in terms of this west side of the property. Staff, do we need to, like, go any further than that, elaborating on that turn where they're coming off? I know you say the whole west side of the building.
Chair and board, staff's comfortable with the language that's present, but if the board desires to have more specific verbiage in there, we can make that work too.
I mean, our comments are captured in the minutes, right?
Correct.
For staff to, when they're reviewing that portion. So I'm good with the wording of that. Just wanted to make sure that that's addressed. I don't have any other questions that.
And I'm seeing only one handicap parking stall. I assume that complies with parking ordinance for the city?
Chair and board, yes, the building official reviews all projects and did not have any additional comments on this one other than we'll need to apply for a permit and meet all building code requirements, but that was not specifically called out. But that's something that that will be reviewed again before a building permit is issued, that all accessibility is met.
Would envision with the elevators and the underground parking, there's plenty of accessible spaces inside of the underground parking. Well, I will make a motion to approve the plans date stamped December 24th, item 3.01, 1 through 12, as proposed by city staff.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you
Good
very
luck on
much.
your project.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have the zoning code text amendment, dynamic LED signs. Staff report, please.
Chair and board, Elizabeth Hammond is with us tonight, and she's the planner that's been working on this project. I just wanted to provide some context that the Independent School District has made this, 622 North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale, has made this request. The Planning Commission actually did review it, as they would review any zoning code amendments at their meeting last month, and they'll be holding a public hearing on this later tonight. Of course, you were, as a board member, invited to that Planning Commission. The whole board was invited to Planning Commission last week, but we wanted to make sure to have it vetted at the meeting tonight, and that's what Elizabeth will be here. But more importantly, I wanted to mention that take all the time you need, but we're probably, some people are going to start moving some chairs and things around for the Planning Commission meeting at 7. We're expecting a lot of residents attend that meeting, so don't mind if there's any bumping. I just want to let you know, but keep going with that meeting and take the time that you need to complete your review. So with that, I'll hand it to Ms. Hammond. Yes.
All right, thank you. So good evening, Chair, members of the board. As Mike already mentioned, this started with a request from the school district to amend the city's sign code to allow dynamic display signs in residential areas where there are school property. So currently, our code does not permit dynamic displays in residential areas. They are allowed in our business commercial districts and our manufacturing districts. So again, the Planning Commission did discuss this last month on whether or not they wanted to even amend the code. It was brought to them as an amendment. Do you want to research this further? Staff will do some research, bring an ordinance back to you, or is this something you don't even want to entertain? And at that meeting, we had a nice discussion about what they would like to see going forward, and they directed staff to prepare an ordinance that would allow for dynamic displays for institutional and public uses, but with certain key standards that would be addressed, such as the size, sound, setbacks, time of display, and brightness. And I'll just note too, some of these images that are in here were originally submitted by the school district as examples of existing signage, and the signs that are pretty standard for educational facilities. So tonight we have a draft ordinance prepared for consideration, and we're looking for any feedback from you and the Planning Commission, looking for you to review that and provide any further direction. And the council is tentatively scheduled to review this on October 11th. So what I would like to do is just go through the specific sections of the code that are being proposed as text amendments. So I have them in the order that they appear. I will note in the actual draft ordinance that you received, I accidentally put the definition first. That is the second section, so if that is confusing you at all. This is all in the order, or in your report, the attachment there. So we'll go through each one here. The first one would be in the comprehensive sign and mural plans, which you're familiar with because we bring those to you for review. So before I move on, I just wanted to show this image. It's better in your packet than it is on this PowerPoint slide, just because of the size of this map. But all those blue parcels that are on that map represent institutional properties, so institutional public properties that are throughout the city. So that first section there, what we are proposing under 44-732 for comprehensive sign and mural plans is essentially requiring that comprehensive sign plan be provided for all permitted institutional and public uses throughout the city. So what this would mean is if there were, and that would be something that staff would, we would have to work on in terms of the application, in terms of what would trigger that, if it's just a small change, or if they're going to be proposing a brand new building, that would certainly trigger a comprehensive sign plan. But if it's, let's say, an existing religious facility that has a small change to an existing sign, that wouldn't trigger it. If it was a dynamic display, that would certainly trigger it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's just saying that any institutional or public uses going forward would have to get a comprehensive sign plan. And then the second clarification that we wanted to make in the ordinance is we didn't have a definition in our sign code section for institutional or public uses. And it is helpful when we get requests to be able to reference definitions. And so we're adding in this definition, which is really just taken right from our 2040 comprehensive plan. We do have some language, some guidance already in our plan, and we thought it works for this as well. So we're adding that in as a proposed definition. And then the third section would be 44-742. So what we're doing here is in our sign code, which I included the entire code in there so that you could get a sense of how it's laid out. I don't have all that on this PowerPoint slide because that would be too much. But so I've just put in the sections where the actual change is being proposed. But I did want to include the whole, that particular section so that you could see how we designate allowable signage for each zoning district currently and what's being proposed. So this first one would be in our residential areas, all of the residential districts, and as it says, all subsequent residential zoning districts after that it may be adopted. We would be adding in there that on-site dynamic display signs for permitted institutional or public uses as an allowable type of sign in that district. We would also be adding that into the limited business and commercial office and neighborhood commercial zoning districts. Currently, it's not in there, but there may be, and there could potentially be down the road, public or institutional uses that locate on parcels that are zoned in that way. And so we want to make sure that we capture any of those institutional or public uses in those zoning districts as well.
Does permitted institutional or public uses, as an example, include 3M?
No. Chair and members of the commission, that would not. Again, going back to that definition, the institutional or public uses, that would mean public schools, fire stations, libraries, water system facilities, religious institutions, cemeteries, private schools, and other city, county, and state-used and owned properties. So to clarify, that is what this would be would be included as when we're looking at a proposal for a dynamic display sign or a comprehensive sign plan for that type of property. Does
So
that
if,
make sense?
If institution like 3M wanted to install a dynamic LED sign, what would be the procedure?
So currently, I believe they are zoned in a light manufacturing or heavy manufacturing zoning district. And so essentially, they could apply for a dynamic display sign. It's permitted already. And so they would just need to obtain a city license and go through the city administrative review process in order to have one constructed on the site. So it's already permitted for that
With the
zoning district.
limitations and size and everything that's laid out
Exactly.
in the code.
Yep, it's in there. And if you go on to, it would be coming up here.
Item 4 of K.
Let's see here. After, let's see, D is business commercial. Yes, so it'd be letter D in the code. It's already listed in there as an allowable type of sign. So it would be on like, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, the 4th page of the code that's included there on that attachment. Attachment 1. Near the bottom of the page. So we're not proposing any changes to Section A. Section A is parkland in the city of Maplewood, or land that is designated as such. So we're not proposing to add in allowing dynamic displays in those areas. And then it's D and E. So obviously, we're not adding it into to D because it's already allowed, as well as E, which is our mixed use, not the PUD, excuse me, mixed use signage standards. Okay, so moving along, the next section is 44-743 dynamic display signs. So this here is the specific standards that we are calling out for dynamic displays in zoning districts where you have public and institutional uses. So the Planning Commission at the meeting in our discussion, they wanted to keep dynamic display signs that are located in potentially residential areas or close to residential areas. They wanted to have separate standards for those dynamic displays than the ones that are currently allowed in our commercial and manufacturing districts. And so this here is modifying that dynamic display sign section specifically. So if you read through there, I will just kind of go through each of the items, and if you have questions, you can jump in and let me know as we go through each one. All of these standards that we are proposing here, we took a look at 6 other suburban cities around the metro, just to get a sense of what other communities are doing. So that's where this started. And we brought that information to the Planning Commission. So that, in combination with their feedback, we've developed these standards for review. So the first thing, and this was it was brought up by the Planning Commission in that discussion, would be requiring that these dynamic display signs have that comprehensive sign plan, which would ultimately trigger your review. And then also that all properties within 350 feet of that dynamic display sign would be notified of that application for a comprehensive sign plan. Going on, dynamic display signs are only permitted as monument signs, is what we are proposing, versus maybe you've seen like a pylon sign with a dynamic display. We're proposing that they would only be on monument signs and that it would be landscaped around the base of the sign. One dynamic display sign as part of the monument sign is permitted for each property, and that the entire monument sign cannot exceed 8 feet in height or 50 square feet in size. And then limiting the size of that digital display portion so that it can only be 50% of the overall monument sign. Let's see. Addressing the setbacks, we are proposing a 10-foot setback from any lot line, and then increasing that setback to 20 feet if it's the adjacent property is shown to be residential. Going on, these here have to do with the animation of the sign and just making sure we're not having something that's moving too quickly, changing the message too quickly, or flashing, twirling, producing distracting images. And let's see. Oh, I think it's important to note this because this was brought up. They wanted to make sure that the messages were complete, and so it wasn't that you had to sit and wait for the next display to see the rest of the message. So that was also included. And then finally, making sure that the sign, if it has a malfunction, that it would be equipped to shut down. And what else? I think that's it, really. That would be worth calling out. Oh, the sound. They also did have concerns about a sound from the signs. And typically, these types of signs don't have sound on them anyway, so. And then also, the time that the sign would be on would be, we're proposing between, or off, 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's a pretty standard time frame that we noted in other communities. Let's see here. And then also that it would automatically dim as you have sunset and sunrise, so that it wasn't just a stark contrast
So
in
if
light.
if there's an image that comes on, it should stay the same image for at least 30 seconds, is what you're saying,
Correct.
before it's
So-
allowed to
Let me go back, sorry.
turn over to the next image.
Correct. So, and that again is kind of looking at what other communities are doing and what makes sense and what's in our existing, because we have these standards in our existing dynamic display, but we thought that given that it's in a residential area, the 30 seconds and for 2 minutes makes sense. So 30 seconds would just be for date, time, temperature. Any other message would be 2 minutes. So that
So-
they are on, the message is on there longer.
So just to be clear, if a property already has a comprehensive sign plan already approved by the city, but the applicant wants to introduce even one dynamic sign there, it will trigger a whole new comprehensive sign plan review?
Yes,
Is
if there already is a comprehensive sign plan for the property, and they're proposing to add a dynamic display, that would likely trigger an amendment to their sign plan.
We'll come back in front of this board.
Exactly, it would come back before you, Chair and Commission. So really, that's all I have to go through. So if you have questions, comments, or feedback on this draft ordinance, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any feedback that you have to the Planning Commission later here.
I think this is really well-written.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you. You've done a good job.
Yeah, and I think you addressed the distracted nature, the
Yeah.
flashing, twirling,
Yeah.
That's good, particularly where some of these schools are in adjacent residential neighborhoods. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the language as it's prepared.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good, thank you.
Chair and Board, we would be looking for a recommendation. There is a motion proposed on page 1 of the staff report.
Okay. All right. Right, real simple. I will motion to approve the comprehensive sign, or it should be. I have the wrong-
Chair and Commission, on the first page, recommended action, motion to approve the draft ordinance amending the city's sign code.
All right, I will recommend approval of the motion to approve the draft ordinance amending the city sign code.
And I will second that. And so the CDRB approves the ordinance as presented to the board today.
All right.
Next, we have unfinished business. I don't think we have any unfinished business. Do we have any visitor presentation? Anybody sitting out there have anything to say to the CDRB?
They're waiting for the next one.
I don't think we've been to any
No,
board.
Chair and Board,
If you would like.
yeah.
You already kind of, sorry, I'm Sept. I work at Old Architects and Engineers, so that's 332 Minnesota Street in St. Paul. I'm here on behalf of ISD 622 tonight, just in case. Their school board meeting is also this evening, so they struggled to cover as they have some major budget items tonight. So here on behalf of Randy Anderson. So I was here in case you had questions. I'll stick around for planning commission, but just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you for attending.
Yeah.
I don't think we've been to a board presentation for a city, have we?
No. Staff, would somebody from the board need to be in attendance for the review of either of the two development projects?
Chair and board, yes, there would be a preference if one of you could be available. The catch here is that they won't be on the same night. The 18 East Shore Drive is on October 11th, and the London Lane project would be on October 25th. So I know if you wanted to do both.
Which one is the London Lane?
October 25th.
October 25th.
I could do the October 11.
October.
You want to do the October 25?
Just take a look at the travel schedule for work. The 25th. Yes, the 25th should work for me.
Okay, thanks, Chair and Board. I will follow up.
Can you email me the
Yep.
details for that so that I have it?
I will do that.
Staff, do you know when our next CDRB meeting is scheduled for?
Chair and Board, the next CDRB meeting would be October 19th.
Okay.
Okay, we talked about board presentations. Any additional staff presentations?
Chair and Board staff does not have anything further for you tonight.
Okay. I move that the board adjourn at 6:42.
And for those in attendance, I'm going to set out some